Hey. Well, again, hello everyone. Welcome to today's STEM Success Workshop series focused on the UB curriculum and more specifically the pathways. My name is Allison Saflita. I am one of the assistant directors for academic advisement here in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, specifically within the Office of Academic Affairs. Quite a mouthful. I'm joined today by one of my fellow assistant directors, Amanda Barber. She is going to be managing the chat. So if there are any questions that come up, feel free to use the chat feature. Amanda will either be able to answer your questions as they come up, or she can interrupt me to talk about that at the moment, or we will follow up with those questions at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So today we are here to talk about the UB curriculum broadly, and then dive into the pathways requirement more specifically. So the UB curriculum, if you're not familiar with that term just yet, is what is your general education program. So general education are courses that are required of students, through the State University of New York system and more specifically at UB that cover a broad range of knowledge areas that SUNY as well as the University at Buffalo want to ensure that you have in order to earn your bachelor's degree through our institution. So the UB curriculum in this specific sort of program and setup was launched in the fall of 2016, so about 9 years ago, with being a purposeful program that has a beginning and an end, and every step of the journey kind of building on the next one. So again, we're going to discuss these four components in depth, really focusing on the pathways. But I do want to start with your UB seminar. So the UB seminar is really the entryway to your UB education. This course is designed to help you be successful at the entry point to the university. So for many of you, this is going to be your first time, in college, taking college courses. So through this, you will be able to learn a little bit more about what it takes to be a successful student, not only in college, but more specifically at the University at Buffalo. I really like this format, for students because that way it's a great opportunity for you to connect with your peers that are starting within the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences as well. So for students that are in our engineering majors, you would all be enrolled in EAS 199. That will be a course that you'll see as part of your schedule for this upcoming fall semester. For those in computer science and computer engineering, you will be enrolled in CSE 199. So again, this course will be built in as part of your schedule. It is required of all first semester students as you make your entryway point into here. So again, this is really kind of that entry point starting for you. Next, we have the foundations. So the foundations are, again, the building blocks of the academic inquiry and lifelong learning. So there are very specific things that all students at UB, as well as through the State University of New York system, which is what I was referring to as SUNY, really require of our students. So the first is communication literacy. So many of you might have some AP credit coming in, or you might see English 105 on your schedule for the upcoming fall semester. This is what satisfies your communication literacy 1 requirement. This is actually communication literacy as a 2-course sequence. Eventually down the road, you will take communication literacy 2, and you will find EAS 360 built into your curriculum requirements. So with communication literacy, I like to say again, like you will have your first course that's going to really be the foundation for academic writing at the university level. Again, you might come in with credit for it, or you might take it here at UB. Otherwise, like I said, you might have to wait till the spring semester, depending on if seats are available at this point. Otherwise, like I said, you'll get that done within your first year. EAS 360 then will come after that, further down the road, and it really is focused on STEM communications, which many of our students appreciate because it's going to help you be more successful in that upper division coursework, especially as it relates to your disciplines of engineering and the computer science field. Next, we have scientific literacy and inquiry. This requirement is technically 2 lecture courses and 1 lab component for a total of 7 credits. Now, for all of you that are in School of Engineering and Applied Sciences majors, this is really built into your curriculum already, so you really do not have to think too much about that. So if you're looking at things that are resources to you, like your academic advising report that can be found in your Hub Student Center, or you're looking at those personal flow sheets or the public flow sheets that are available to you through the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences specifically for your major, you will find those boxes that talk about the scientific literacy and inquiry. So again, common classes for our engineering students would be the physics sequence, the chemistry courses. For folks in computer science, you have sometimes a little bit more flexibility with what you can take. If you have questions about that, you can certainly reach out to your academic advisor here in our office in order to figure out which courses will be helpful for you there. Next, we have math and quantitative reasoning as a foundation. All of you do need to take Calculus 1 as part of your course requirements. That course is absolutely math and quantitative reasoning, so you would automatically have that. Some students might be coming in with additional credit, like pre-calculus credit, or if you're starting with pre-calculus, that can also work to satisfy this requirement. So it's, again, one of those foundations that you will get just by virtue of doing the courses required of your curriculum. You don't necessarily think of or need to thinking of taking a separate additional course on top of what's already required for your major. The last foundation then is diversity. So this diversity learning requirement is now actually incorporated to the pathways. This was something that we had as a standalone foundation through the UB curriculum. It wasn't required like State University of New York system wide, but in fall 2023, SUNY followed UB's lead to incorporate that into the curriculum. So there were some changes that happened with the pathways. And like I said, we're going to talk about those in depth, especially as some of you may be on this call today because you need to select a pathways course as part of your fall schedule. So again, we're here to talk about that requirement, what that means, the types of classes that'll be offered there. And again, a diversity course could be something that you might end up taking this fall. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like next. All right. So again, as I mentioned, you have to satisfy certain knowledge areas in order to receive your degree through SUNY and specifically UB. The pathways were developed to help you meet those SUNY knowledge area requirements and help to make more meaning of the process of completing these degree requirements. So again, we will certainly talk about the pathways in depth as we go into the next few slides here. But as showing on the screen here, right, it's going to be a series of courses linked together by a broad topic. You're going to kind of examine that through multiple perspectives. And really, this is where you have some agency or ownership of your educational experience. You get to choose the courses that you want to take that have specifically been tagged as a way of satisfying this degree requirement. So you're going to complete what we call a global pathway topic as well as a thematic pathway topic. And again, we'll go into that in a little bit more depth. But I do want to just mention the UB curriculum capstone very briefly here. You'll see this as part of your flow sheet, as part of your degree requirements. So UBC 399 is the UB curriculum capstone. This is different than the capstone required for your major, but basically this is a reflection of everything that you've learned, right? So as I mentioned in the beginning, the UB curriculum was designed to have a purposeful sort of path with a beginning and an end, so that UB seminar is really your first step in that introduction, whereas the UB curriculum capstone is going to be that endpoint then. This is a course where it's meant to be a reflection of your learning experience. So again, you'll reflect on the courses that you've taken for those foundations, as well as the things you've chosen as part of your pathway. So I do like to mention that's like, again, there's a reason why you're choosing these classes. So think about that as you are making these course selections. All right. So as I briefly mentioned with the pathways, in this specific requirement, again, all students will be required to complete one thematic pathway topic as well as a global pathway topic. So the pathways are typically satisfied by taking three credit hour courses. And you'll see in the tool, as I will demonstrate in a little bit, that you'll be able to choose those 3 classes. They're grouped by lists. So you'll see like a list 1, a list 2, a list 3, and you will be asked as a student to select one course from each of those lists. So while it's not required, you do have the option under the global pathways to study a language other than English. If you're thinking of just more general broad courses, global reflections would be the global pathway topic you might want to take a look at. So like I said, we've got that there. For the thematic pathway, you have these different 5 broad themes to choose from. So there's going to be courses from a variety of different disciplines related to the broad topic of environment, health, humanity, innovation, and justice. And again, as a reminder, you will choose one thematic pathway topic to complete in its entirety and one global pathway topic to complete in its entirety. So how might you complete this credit? Well, one is certainly by enrolling in those courses here at UB and taking classes once you have started your journey as a University at Buffalo student. But you might be coming in with some AP, advanced placement, other test credit, or transfer credit if you did any dual enrollment through another institution prior to coming to UB. So it is possible if this coursework is related to these broad knowledge areas, things like social sciences, humanities, the arts, music, world history, like I said, diversity, those types of things. That if you have credit that's coming in that could be utilized, you will find this as an option that you can select. So we will use a tool called the Pathfinder tool, which I will demonstrate a little bit later on, in order to see like if you have any credit that's posted or if it hasn't posted yet, a good way to check that you could potentially use and apply towards the pathway. So if you do have test credit, or if you do have transfer credit that can be utilized as part of your pathways requirements, you should see those as drop downs within the tool itself. And this is pulling information in real time from your Hub Student Center. And your Hub Student Center, as a reminder, is really your official academic record here at the university. So the minute that it's posted to your academic record, you will be able to see that live in the Pathfinder tool. The same way it goes with enrollment. The minute you enroll in a course, you will see that reflected in the Pathfinder tool if you need to make updates or changes to your course selections. So there is a bit of a difference between how test credit and transfer credit can be utilized. So again, test credit would be coming from something like advanced placement or AP exams, international baccalaureate, IB, or CLEP exam credit. So test credit can only be used where we say a direct articulation to a pathway course exists. This means, for example, that if you took like a microeconomics AP exam and you see that, okay, and I received the score of a 4 or 5, which gives me academic credit for Eco 182 here at UB. I could then use that test credit any place where Eco 182 has been approved to satisfy the requirement. So that's visible on the screen, very small, but it is visible there as highlighted in blue towards the top of list 2 from where this sort of selection was pulled from. And you'll see a little green button next to it that says completed. It's going to look just as if you took the class at the University at Buffalo. The transfer credit is a little bit different. So if you took a course through a local community college or another 4-year institution, so if it has a direct articulation, it'll also appear directly in the list, just like that test credit does. But you will also see that if it's a course that doesn't necessarily have a direct articulation, but does meet that broader theme of like a social science or humanities, or a language, for example, you will see that sort of at the top in more of a green shaded type of display. So again, you'll see that displayed right in the tool in the lists and the topics where those courses are. There's also a course filter tab where we can see that a little bit more easily in the one shot. All right. So as we talk again about making course selections, there are specific recommendations from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. If you see there, since C's resources, I do like to point out that acronym, since I use C's a lot, other folks might use SEAS. But again, these recommendations are for students and especially in our high credit majors. So any of our engineering majors are considered to be a high credit major. So we recommend double dipping, quote unquote, the courses that you see on the screen here. So if you are a electrical engineering major, you will find EE 383 and EE 336 as part of your course requirements in the catalog, on the flow sheet, as well as in your academic advising report. These courses also do live in the Pathfinder tool under each of the topics where it's approved in order to meet the list 3 requirement. So again, all students will take one list 3 one course, or sorry, one list 1 course, one list 2, one list 3 under the same topic. So again, as a engineering major within our school, you can look for the course that coincides with your major and select that as your list 3 option. Now, that doesn't mean you're automatically eligible for the course to take that right away, right? So you can't skip all those foundational courses and take this right away. You'll still have to wait until you're eligible and meet all the prerequisites in order to take the course. But the Pathfinder tool is, again, more of a mechanism for selecting and acknowledging that these are the courses I plan to take. And then as you enroll through your Hub Student Center, that's when they will show and sort of flip from just being planned to in progress to then ultimately successfully completed. So our students, though, in computer science, you are not considered to be in a high credit major. Therefore, you do not have any specific list 3 courses that you should be picking. The advice is that you can go ahead and choose any list 3 course that do not have prerequisites or that have prerequisites that you have satisfied in that sense. We do have a website dedicated specifically to the pathway resources. It's linked in this PowerPoint, which I will be sharing as well. Amanda can also throw that link into the chat, but I will also display that when we switch over to the Pathfinder tool so you can see what this page looks like, how to navigate some of those other tools and resources that we have. One of our colleagues, Jonathan Bonebrake, another senior academic advisor on our team, put together a lovely quick 2-minute video that summarizes, again, how to utilize that tool as you're navigating making these course selections. All right, so again, where do you make these selections? As I mentioned, it is the Pathfinder tool. This is the official sort of mechanism that we have set up that communicates with your official academic record to, again, acknowledge that these are the courses I plan to take, or these are the courses I have taken that I want to have counted towards those degree requirements. And the reason why using this Pathfinder tool is important is because this is, again, the only way that your official academic record is going to know why you might be taking specific classes. So for example, there's a course called Sociology 101 or SOC 101. This class is not built in as a requirement for any of our engineering or computer science programs. So if you enroll in that course, or you've been enrolled in that course for this upcoming semester because you need a pathway class, if you do not select it as a course option for you in the Pathfinder tool, your official academic record won't acknowledge that that is you're utilizing that or you want to utilize that as a pathway class. And the reason why that's important is because when it comes to financial aid and having coursework that is what we call considered degree applicable, meaning that it is working towards your primary major or towards satisfying general education. And since the pathway courses sometimes live in multiple lists, we will show you and acknowledge that, how that's visible to you in the system. It's another reason why it's really important to make sure your course selections and the courses you're thinking of taking are appropriately set in this Pathfinder tool. So that way we don't run into a hiccup where you are being notified that you might be ineligible for your financial aid because you haven't selected these courses in the tool for the upcoming semester. So we will use that Pathfinder tool, and I will go in order to show you how to utilize it, how to select classes, how to see if you have any pending credit that might be able to utilize. But in order to find the Pathfinder tool, again, you can do a quick Google search by typing in UB Pathfinder. If you are going into your Hub Student Center, that academic progress tile that you see with the little arrow going up like a stock exchange will take you to the navigation that we see on the right. It gives you advisor information. So again, if you have questions and want to follow up with your assigned academic advisor here within the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, you can absolutely find that contact information on this page, as well as 3 down, you will see link to Pathfinder, and that will also redirect you to the Pathfinder tool. All right. So with that being said, let me go ahead and stop sharing that particular screen. Let me share this one. Okay. All right. So the website that I have pulled up here is the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, where you can see, again, that there are recommendations. So if you are on the main School of Engineering and Applied Sciences website, if you go to academics and then go to academic advisement, here is where you will find information, and this is the majority of our group. But down here in the left-hand navigation, you'll see thematic and global pathways, and this will take you to that sort of the recommendations page. So as we can see here, again, here's a quick link to that Pathfinder tool. Again, the C's Pathway resources. Here is the link to that video that John created. We've got the reminders again about those list 3 recommendations, right? So if you didn't happen to jot down which are the ones required for your major, you can easily reference those on this website. Aerospace engineering is a little bit different. There's a couple different things that are shown here recently because the curriculum has been updated for fall of 2025. So this website shows for students that are under the old curriculum and then those that would be under the new curriculum as well. Additionally, there are some ways to look at resources to see what courses are offered by term as well. So if you are looking for specific courses, you can also utilize this list to see if there's something available. It's pulling data real time from what's available in the system. All right, so now we're going to move on to the actual Pathfinder tool itself. So what you will do is you will log in using your UBIT name and password. Mine looks a little bit different, right? Because it's saying like I'm not eligible for the Pathfinder, right? Because I'm not a current student at the University at Buffalo under the UB curriculum. However, I can demonstrate using some of my previously completed coursework. I am an alum. I graduated with my undergraduate degree from here in 2008. So you'll be able to see some of those courses that I took when I was here under general education and how that kind of falls into utilizing the Pathfinder tool. So up here at the top, you are going to find that there is My Selections, which is really your home page. Global Pathway will show you those topics available to you under the global options, thematic pathway, the options that exist there. And then there's this course filter tab. So this is something I would certainly point you to first. If you think that there are classes that you've taken previously that ultimately could be utilized as part of this. So again, I took courses through UB, so you can see that sort of list here. So if you do have any transfer credit that's posted to your academic record already, you will be able to see those there. If there's test credit, that would also appear in this list here. So again, you can kind of quickly see like if you have anything that's available. You could then use the course filter tool down here. So for example, if I want to see where History 162 could be utilized, I could click on History 162, and I will see that it's considered to be a thematic pathway course under the topics of humanity, justice, or innovation. So again, what we can do is we can go into, say, the thematic pathway first. And if I know that that course is offered under that humanity topic, I can click on Show Courses, and that will expand this list. So if you're looking for a description of what we mean by humanity, you'll see a broad description up here at the top. We can show less. But here is where we'll actually see all of those courses that are approved to satisfy your humanity topic under the thematic pathway. So as I mentioned, if you do have completed credit, whether that's through transfer work or whether that is through test credit, you will see that appear at the top of the list. So we're making it very nice and easy that if something is already posted to your academic record, you will see that that course exists there. So I can go ahead here and click on list 1, or click on that little radio button to the left, which will sort of select that class in this particular space. Now, if I scroll down, we're going to see the rest of those courses in alphabetical order. List 2, I took 2 different social science courses. So we've got Psychology 101 and Eco 182. Again, I can go ahead and select one of those classes. But if I don't have credit that could be utilized and I'm looking to figure out maybe what does this nature through time mean, the little down caret on the right-hand side of the screen allows you to see the description of that course in the catalog, when the course is typically offered, and if there are any enrollment requirements, right? So if there's prerequisites that you would need to take prior to taking EVS 220, you would see those listed here, pulling information directly from the undergraduate degree and course catalog. The little gray button that we are seeing here indicates that it is a cross list, meaning that you will find it also over on the global pathway side. And that would be important to note. So I cannot select PSE 102 here and then also select it on the global pathway side. They need to be unique courses between the global pathway as well as the thematic pathway. Now, I do have other credit that is appearing here in list three, but what I can do is look for one of those classes. So for example, if I have any biomedical engineers on the call today, BE 436 is one of those courses that's required for our biomedical engineering students. And I could go ahead and select that. Again, as a biomedical engineer, there are prerequisites associated with this course. And again, eventually, as long as you're making steady progress through the foundational courses and the rest of the curriculum, you will ultimately satisfy those prerequisites in order to take this class once you become eligible. For those computer science students on the call, right, like you would need to make sure that you follow kind of that prerequisite sequence moving backwards to see, okay, if I'm interested in taking this class, what classes do I need to take before that in order to become eligible? So if I scroll down all the way to the very bottom, some of these lists are quite extensive and long, but eventually if you reach the bottom or go back to the top, you will see a blue select these courses button. You'll click on that. It'll take you back to the home screen where you can see, okay, I've got one course already completed. That credit is coming in. I need to still take Political Science 102, and I also still need to take BE 436, and that's okay. Now we're going to go to the global pathway side. Now, I don't personally have an interest in taking a language other than English. So again, I'm going to look at this global reflections topic. Here's a very clear way that I'm seeing I don't have any pending transfer or any completed test credit that can be utilized. So I'll want to go ahead and select a course here. I'm going to scroll down and look at list two. This is that course again that I had selected on the other side. You might see that with the little red exclamation mark. If you hover over that red exclamation mark, it'll tell you the specific reason why you cannot select or should not be selecting that course. Again, this is saying because again, I've already selected it on the thematic, I can't also utilize that in the global. It will allow me to select it here, but then it's going to throw the error everywhere else. So you would just need to remember that if you really want to use it on the global pathway side, you will need to then switch it on the thematic pathway side. I see a question that just popped up in the chat here. Yes, you do need to pick one course from each list. So whatever topic you choose, so for example, if we go back up to the top and I choose the topic of global reflections, I will need to choose and select one course from the list one course from list two. I'm going to select something else different there so we don't have those red errors. And then again, I'm going to go down into list three and I'm going to find that BE 493 research and design. Select that because I'm going to pretend I am a biomedical engineering major at this point, select that class, go all the way to the bottom, select these courses. Then you should see, again, I'm having a lot of other things because I'm an administrator, but like your screen should look a little bit more like this, where right, once you've met the requirements, you haven't selected the same course more than once. If you've chosen appropriate courses, you will see your pathway selections meet all the requirements. This button for you, though, is going to be bright and red. It is very important, and that's what this note is pointing toward, that you need to actually save your selections to Hub. So while administratively, myself, Amanda, our other colleagues, we can walk you through the tool as yourself and talk about your course selections, things like that, we cannot actually save these selections for you. That is still a step that you need to take as a student in order for these classes to be appearing as part of your academic record. So it's really important that, again, if you are going into this tool looking for classes that you might want to take, especially if you've been directed as an incoming first year student, that we need to put you into a pathway course and your advisor is asking like, hey, like give us some ideas or thoughts about what you might be interested in taking. It's very important that you go into the Pathfinder tool and save your selections because that will allow us as the advisor to see what you're interested in or what you're thinking about taking. Another great question that I'm seeing pop up in the chat here, if you change your mind after a year, can you change your pathways? Absolutely. So if I saved these selections today, but then realized like, I'm not sure why I chose world religions, that doesn't sound as interesting to me as something else, you can absolutely come back into this Pathfinder tool and change the course selection. Again, the Pathfinder tool is just the mechanism for identifying which courses you plan on taking. So right, it could possibly be that, you really want to take RSP 313, but every time you go to take it, it conflicts with a course required for your major. And that course is also only offered at one specific time. So you might have to go back in here and change the course because it conflicts with your schedule, or you might have a change of heart in terms of what you want to take. Maybe one of your friends had a great experience with a class and you're like, oh, then that sounds really close to what I want to do, or something that I'm just really interested in learning about that I didn't have the opportunity to experience before. By all means, you can come back into this Pathfinder tool. As your academic advisors, though, you do not, like we're saying, you do not want to go back in though and take something else from a list you've already completed. So for example, if I took History 162 this fall and I'm looking for another pathway course for spring, I would not want to go and then choose something that's only available in list one of the humanity thematic pathway topic, because that second course that I would be taking would no longer be considered degree applicable. So especially if you're thinking about things like degree applicability for financial aid reasons and just time to degree and making sure that you're making steady progress through your curricular requirements, you wouldn't want to go back and take something again from a requirement that you've technically satisfied, especially when we're talking about the pathways here. So that would be the only sort of caveat, is that, like, yes, you can absolutely go back in, make different selections, things like that, but they would really only want to be changes to courses you haven't taken yet. I know it's also common too for students that might change their major in the first year, or if you are undecided engineering and you're not really sure which engineering sort of curriculum you want to follow yet, that's perfectly okay. What we would suggest is to identify the one that you're most interested in. So say, for example, if you're really torn between mechanical and civil but are not necessarily sure, pick one of those for now. And then ultimately, if you choose the other, you can always come back into the tool and save the other recommended courses in your list 3. Again, it's just remembering to come back into this tool and then just clicking this button again to save to hub in order to make sure that it's reflecting in your academic advising report. So let me see here. Up here at the top, again, there's another Save to Hub button, so you could also click that. There is a link to a Pathfinder video tutorial as well. Again, just learning more about the pathways or connecting with academic advisors. There's links and kind of back and forth to all of the resources that we do have in order to ensure that you understand how to navigate this tool, how to make course selections, and again, specifically for this particular requirement. Trying to think, let me actually pull up the chat quickly here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just to see if there's anything else that we can make sure we cover.
Allison, one of
Yeah.
the students had a question about what courses are represented by like list 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know if you quickly want to go over like, oh, the list 1 courses are like the diversity courses, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, no, great. That's perfect. Let me go ahead and pull up this page here. So, right, as we were mentioning, or as I was mentioning, that the pathways are the way that you're satisfying these SUNY general knowledge area requirements, where you have to have a certain number of sort of like, they used to be called like breadth areas, things again that are outside of your specific major. So one of the ones that's specifically required is diversity. So that is embedded into thematic list 1, as Amanda just referenced. Then I'm just actually, let's go ahead and share the screen. There we go. All right, so what I have pulled up right now is a view of the academic undergraduate degree and course catalog. But this is where we can see kind of what are those areas represented behind of those lists. So in every single thematic pathway topic, any course that's under list 1 would be meeting the diversity requirement. So again, that is helping to ensure that you're meeting that SUNY requirement, that you will have a diversity course as part of your academic record. Any course that's under thematic list 2 would be a social science class or like US history or civic engagement as they're coded. List 3 would have, like what we're saying by no UB area, are things like the major specific courses, are things that are not tied to these SUNY general knowledge themes, but world history, global awareness, arts or humanities would also appear there. So again, if you have multiple courses or things that are represented by multiple things, you might find those there as well. On the global pathway side, very specifically in the global reflections topic, when you see those like a 3 list, you are going to find that there's languages or like global awareness, world history courses. Global List 2 is going to have arts or humanities. And then Global List 3 has the other courses that were found on the thematic pathway side, or like the no UB area. So the way that this was structured or restructured back in fall 2023 was helping to ensure that you didn't have to think about like picking a course here and picking a course here, and then it was going to limit the number of options you have. So just by virtue of choosing a course that either is falling in there automatically for you, because again, it is test or transfer credit that meets one of those student knowledge areas, or by choosing a course that you would eventually take here at UB, that will ultimately allow you to make sure that you're meeting that SUNY requirement. So again, just by picking a course in the list, you will sort of know that, okay, this is definitely meeting the diversity requirement. This is definitely meeting either social sciences or US history. So I'm going to have a unique area here, a unique area here, a unique area here, and a unique area here, ultimately to make sure that you are satisfying that specific requirement. What I do want to point out, so for those of you who might be interested in a language topic, perhaps you started studying language in high school and wanted to continue that moving forward. The most common entry points for the languages that we do offer at UB are listed here. So again, you can just kind of scroll alphabetically to see where that might fall in. What I do want to point out is that you might find only like 2 lists, for example. So let me scroll down to Japanese 111. This is our introductory Japanese course. You will see that there's a list 1 where it's Japanese 111, list 2 is Japanese 112, but then list 3 says only 2 courses are required for this topic. So the reason why certain global pathway language sequences will only have 2 courses is because you are actually meeting like the 9 credit hour requirement between 2 classes. So some of our language classes are actually 6 credit hours. So Japanese 111 along with like Chinese 111, Korean 111, those are all 6 credit hour courses. The second component is a 3 credit hour course. So again, by virtue of taking those 2 classes together, you would ultimately end up completing 9 credits. So that's why a 3rd class is not required. Some of our other languages, though, if we scroll down to say Spanish, like Spanish 111 is a 3 credit course, Spanish 112 is a 3 credit course, and Spanish 201 is a 3 credit course. So therefore, again, between the 3 classes, you are still hitting that 9 credit hour requirement. So a lot of the sort of the technicalities of the requirements are built into this. And so really the key thing to take away is that you are going to complete a global pathway topic and a thematic pathway topic. And this is going to be over the course of your entire academic career at UB, right? So you're not going to be taking all 6 pathway classes in your first year. They're going to be spread out from your first year to your very last semester. If you know, like I said, depending on which ones you have that are part of your major, you'll take those over the course of your time at UB. Again, you can go back into the tool and select other classes or switch topics if you haven't taken courses yet, or if you have utilized them in different places. Again, we just strongly suggest that you do not go back in and pull something out that you've already taken and putting something new in its place to help ensure, again, that you're going to be making steady progress toward your degree, as well as keeping up with the requirements and degree applicable credits for financial aid purposes. But again, the Pathfinder tool is something you can visit at any point in time. So if you, like I said, want to just kind of look to see what's out there, certainly do that. New courses are being added too. So for example, last year, before the official launch of our new AI and Society department, there was an AI and Ethics course that was launched. And so that was a new class that was added in. So I don't think it ever hurts that, again, if you make course selections today and you're like, nope, these are the classes I really want to take at UB. And okay, well, as I get ready to register for spring of 26, I know I need a pathway class. These are the ones I selected before. Let me just go double check and see if there's anything new that, maybe speaks to my interest now more. And we can go ahead and look to see then, is that available? Does it work with your schedule? And so forth. Again, this tool is just the mechanism for talking with your academic advising report to ensure that, again, like the classes that you are enrolling in or that you have already completed previously are going to be working towards this specific requirement, just because the credit can be utilized in multiple places in multiple ways. And then again, that's sort of spelled out here, right? So you've got some world history and global awareness courses, but again, that can also live in global list one. So in order for your academic advising report to really truly reflect what your intent is, that's where this Pathfinder tool comes in to help direct where those courses are going into your official academic record.
Hey, Allison, we have a good question in the
Mhm.
chat that
Yes.
I think probably a lot of students have. So one of our participants said, can AP classes that give general credit for a subject rather than a specific class be used for pathways? So like that history 999 TR USH.
Mhm. Yeah, so I know that's a very popular one. Unfortunately, for AP or any other test credit, it can only be used if there's a direct articulation. So, for example, again, like the history, US history is a very popular AP exam that a lot of our students take. There isn't a direct articulation from the history department to one of the courses that is approved. So, you cannot utilize that credit in the pathways. That might help with other things. And I certainly, I always tell students to make sure they send all of their AP credit in because, right, that additional credit does help with overall making sure you're going to get to the, total number of credits required to graduate with your bachelor's degree. But unfortunately, if there is no direct articulation to like a pathway class, it cannot be utilized. And again, it has to be a course that's approved in the pathways as well. So for example, you might earn a direct articulation for like Math 141, which is Calculus 1. However, again, mathematics courses are not part of the pathway. So, right, like you also use Math 141, even if it is a direct articulation there. So it's only going to be classes that you would find in the Pathfinder tool, things, again, along the lines of like social sciences, so like economics, political science, psychology, sociology. You're also going to find maybe like I said, some other ones, but right, it would have to be within the realm of what's actually approved as a course at UB, like as if you were taking the course here on, in person, um, in order for it to be utilized in the Pathfinder tool. Right. Just want to try to go through the chat here quickly. Oh, so I know there's a question here in the chat just about like how long it might take for transfer credits or test credits to appear. I believe this week is when the AP scores were released. So hopefully if you identified the University at Buffalo as the institution where you wanted to receive those scores, they should be posted to your academic record already, if not very soon. But with transfer credit, it can vary, as Amanda mentioned, from, how long it might take. Right now, we're estimating if you have the transcripts sent already, which you would need to request from those institutions. So, for example, if you took classes through, like, say, SUNY Erie Community College and requested a transcript be sent from SUNY Erie to the University at Buffalo today, it could take anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks to post and add to your academic record. If you've looked at a system like Taurus, which is our transfer articulation system to see how that credit might come to UB, if you see that like, oh, it's a direct articulation for Psychology 101, you can select Psych 101 in the Pathfinder tool now. And then once that credit posts, it would automatically reflect to show that you have already satisfied that class via transfer credit. So again, it's a good idea that if you, like I said, know kind of how that credit might be coming in, you can do that. Like I said, if it takes a little while for the credit to post, you can always make selections now, go back in, and like I said, make some different selections if you do end up having some transfer credit that posts a little bit later on. Let's see here. So in terms of like, right, like if we're making recommendations about courses you could take in the, sort of first semester at UB, we would certainly suggest anything from the thematic list one or list two or global list one or list two, right? It might depend on what credit you might have coming in. If you don't have credit coming in, you can really choose from any of those. Anything that you typically find at like the 100 or 200 level, in the system are generally going to be more like broad survey type of courses. As you get into like more of the upper division level classes, like 300 level courses, sometimes the 200 ones, they could be more seminar or discussion based, which might just be a different sort of learning style. So again, depending on which format you might be most comfortable with, or also content, obviously too, that would be something to think about. If there's multiple availabilities, meaning that, you know, all of the classes that you're interested in taking are offered this fall and are open and work with your schedule, you can look to see which one, you know, like I said, might be the best fit for you there. Let's see. Oh, how does having, let's see here. I see there's a question about minors, but my chat is not being super helpful.
A student asked how having a minor compares and corresponds to pathways. Does the minor replace the pathway process? Do you do both?
Gotcha. Yep. So in that situation, right, as you said, Amanda, again, you would be expected to complete the requirements for both. And when you're looking to see, you know, what requirements you have for your major, for a possible minor, you know, within your UB curriculum as well, in the catalog, it will spell out like how much overlap can exist between the two. So as I mentioned, we do consider our engineering majors to be high credit majors. And because of that, we worked out an agreement where, again, you can overlap two of the courses from your major with the pathways in order to meet that requirement. Ultimately, then, like for a minor, you might have more restrictions in terms of how much can overlap. I know certain minors do not allow for any overlap between the pathways, but that would specifically be listed in the undergraduate degree and course catalog in order to help ensure that you know exactly, like I said, what you need there. Right. May I see that you answered the last question that popped in, so thank you for that. Just wait another moment here.
There was a question above that, Allison. Are there any
Mhm.
consequences to not graduating in 4 years
Oh,
except impact to financial aid? So maybe a little bit more broad, but
oh, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, generally speaking, we don't require students to, you know, you must graduate in 4 years or else you're out of the program, right? Right. Like, so, you know, eligibility for financial aid that can certainly be impacted. But right, like if you want to take a little bit longer because maybe you want to pursue a double major, maybe you change your major and that changes your timeline to degree, you add a minor or something like that to your academic record. You certainly can extend your timeline, but right, it's important to think about those other factors. I think financial aid is certainly the biggest one because depending on the type of financial aid a student might have, that can certainly be limited in terms of how many semesters you may be awarded with specific financial aid. So I would certainly just recommend that if you are thinking about extending beyond, you know, what we would say is like the 8 semesters, which is what we have as far as like our flow sheets go, or how the catalog lists a typical timeline for a bachelor's degree, to just work with your academic advisor and the other resources on campus in order to ensure that, like I said, you are aware of how your course selection and your academic planning is going to be impacted by those other factors. I see another couple of just coming back up here. Yep. So if you, okay, yep. So that's that. What does it mean about a cross list course, right? So the cross list just means that you can select that same course in multiple places, right? So you'll see that it's a course that is considered a thematic pathway course, but it's also considered a global pathway course. The ones that are cross listed, again, typically have enough global content that they can be considered as a global pathway course, but they also would meet the parameters of what it means to be applied to a specific thematic pathway topic as well, right? So you might have a humanity-based course that also covers global topics, and that's why it can live in both lists. So that's, again, more of what that cross-list course means. In terms of what's the latest, oh, this is a little bit different, but what's the latest time that you recommend changing major? If you want to do that, why? It really is going to depend on your particular path because Right. Like it depends on, where you're at in your current curriculum, what the requirements are and so forth. I think the sooner that you know that you want to change your major is certainly the best. But right, work with your academic advisor, especially if you have any thoughts or concerns or doubts about what you may want your major to be, because there might be specific course recommendations that could be made in order to, help ensure that there would be a smooth transition, how that might go. So again, I just encourage you to work with your academic advisor on questions like that to help ensure that you are, feeling set up for success as you may transition into a different program if you're thinking of doing so. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, so if you're doing a double major, so one that's popular for our students, right, is between mechanical and aerospace. You can pick either of those. Again, when it comes to the UB curriculum capstone, it's going to ask you to think about how the courses you took as part of those pathways, like supported that broader theme, right? So it's not specifically, if you are mechanical and aerospace, you can select the one mechanical course and one aero, that's okay. As long as you've successfully completed both of those courses to then become eligible for the UB curriculum capstone, that's the most important piece there. And again, if you change your major, right? So if you start as a civil engineering major, but then switch to mechanical at some point, you'd want to make sure in the Pathfinder tool you've selected then the new major. So that way, as you enroll in those courses, it doesn't trip you up then in enrolling in the UB curriculum capstone then down the road. And then, like I said, in terms of enrolling in these pathway classes, you will do that directly through your Hub Student Center, and it depends on your schedule. So in your first semester, we typically recommend 14 to 16 credits. Generally speaking, if you're taking English 105, which is that communication literacy 1 requirement, you generally do not need a pathway course on top of that. However, if there's no English 105 seats or we've run out of them, because they're usually split between the fall and the spring, right? Because every single student at UB needs English 105. And there's only a certain number of instructors that can teach that. So we have half of the group that would be taking English 105 in the fall, half of you all would be taking it in the spring. So, right, like you might be getting communications at this point that says, like, hey, we know you need English 105, but we don't have that space, so we need to put you into the pathway class. And it's just flip-flopping what you see in terms of your academic plan. So, right, like it's going to, like I said, so we might want to be asking you for your feedback in terms of what classes you might like. So again, your advisor might reach out, or else, like I said, we would be looking to, we might automatically enroll you in one if there isn't communication. But if you have questions or maybe think about changing things like that, you should have the ability to do that through your Hub Student Center at this point as well. So right, like we're not necessarily saying to, kind of, do more than you need to at this point. You have plenty of time to take these over that time. Let's see here. If you have, like I said, let's see. So thank you, Amanda, for following up on that request. In the honors, like I said, there's not really specific overlap there. We would encourage you to work with your honors advisor if you are part of the honors college to ask if there's any specific things they might recommend with regard to the pathways. Great. Well, with that being said, I want to thank you all for coming to today's presentation. I hope you found it helpful just to have a little bit more sort of insight and backstory on what the pathways are, more broadly UB curriculum, and how you can utilize that Pathfinder tool in order to make some initial course selections. Again, reiterating the fact that, again, you'll take one global pathway topic and one thematic pathway topic during your entire time here at UB. You can always come back into the tool and make updates to those selections and work with your academic advisor, should you have any further questions and concerns at that point. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.